At a family dinner, my niece said this to me. Then, she said it like it was obvious, my niece said, lifting my bracelet between her fingers. Mommy said it's from a flea market. The words landed before I could prepare for them. My hand stopped moving. The fork hovered uselessly near my plate. I felt a tightening in my chest that made it hard to breathe normally, as if my body had decided this moment required stillness. The room didn't react. Someone laughed at something unrelated. Plates clinked. A chair scraped softly across the floor. Life continued, uninterrupted. I stayed silent. My sister glanced over, smiled faintly, and told her daughter to give it back. Her voice was calm, neutral, efficient. She didn't correct the comment, only the behavior. No one looked at me. I smiled anyway. I didn't choose to. My face did it on its own, as if it had learned long ago when smiling was safer than reacting. What hurt wasn't the implication about the bracelet. What hurt was how ordinary it sounded. I realized, in that instant, that this was how I existed in conversations I wasn't part of. This was how I was summarized when my presence wasn't required. Small, disposable, easily reduced. Children don't invent that kind of language. They repeat what feels normal to them. That thought settled slowly inside me, heavy and unavoidable. Whatever had been said about me behind my back had been said enough times to lose its sharpness. It had become casual, familiar, easy to pass on. I felt something shift internally, quiet but irreversible, like a door closing without a sound. I had spent years telling myself I was imagining the distance in my family. I blamed timing, stress, personality differences. I told myself I was sensitive because that explanation required the least disruption. That night made that story harder to believe. If this was what was said casually, without malice or hesitation, then something deeper had already been decided. I wondered what happened after this. In my family, affection follows an order that no one ever names. Some people are protected instinctively, their flaws softened before they're noticed, their mistakes explained away before they land. Others are corrected, observed, managed. I learned early which category I belonged to. I was the one who adapted. I learned how to read the room before speaking, how to adjust my tone to avoid sounding difficult, how to phrase opinions as suggestions so they wouldn't feel threatening. No one ever asked me to do this. I just noticed what worked. Affection came inconsistently. Praise was brief and often redirected. Attention felt conditional, something you earned by being useful, agreeable, or invisible. I became good at being low maintenance. I learned to laugh at myself before anyone else could, to soften my reactions, to keep my needs vague. I told myself this was maturity. The bracelet wasn't expensive. I hadn't bought it to impress anyone. I bought it after a year that had quietly exhausted me, a year where I had survived things no one asked about. It marked endurance, not status. When my niece spoke, it felt like that private meaning had been exposed and dismissed in the same breath. Later that night, long after everyone had left, I replayed the moment with uncomfortable precision. The way she held it up, the ease in her voice, the way my sister didn't rush to correct the assumption, only the action, the absence of discomfort in the room. That absence stayed with me longer than the comment itself. It wasn't the first time something small had landed too hard. It was just the first time I couldn't explain it away. Once I allowed myself to look back honestly, memories surfaced without effort. Birthdays where my gifts stayed unopened until the end. Conversations where my sentences drifted into silence. Jokes made at my expense that were framed as affection. I remembered sitting at family gatherings, listening to stories I had already heard, waiting for a pause that never came. I remembered how often I found myself cleaning during visits, washing dishes that didn't need washing, organizing drawers no one asked me to touch. It gave my hands purpose. It justified my presence. I remembered how my achievements were acknowledged briefly, then followed by a change of subject. None of it was dramatic. None of it was cruel enough to confront. It was all subtle, polite, easy to deny. That made it harder to name. I had learned to accept attention in small doses, to feel grateful for crumbs. I told myself families don't always know how to show love. That intention mattered more than impact. I didn't realize how much of myself I was erasing to keep that belief intact. The accumulation was slow. A message unanswered, an invitation sent late, a plan made without checking if I was available. Each moment small enough to dismiss. Together, impossible to ignore. I noticed how often I apologized for existing in conversations. How often I explained my reactions. How often I softened disappointment so no one would feel accused. I was managing other people's comfort at the expense of my own clarity. The breaking point didn't arrive with anger. It arrived quietly. I was alone one morning, standing in front of my closet, holding a shirt I didn't feel like myself in. I couldn't remember the last time I had. I sat on the edge of the bed and felt something loosen inside me. Not violently, not painfully, just quietly. Hope slipped away. Not hope that things would change, hope that I was wrong. The memory of the dinner surfaced again, sharper now, stripped of excuses. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a bad night. It wasn't a child being careless. It was confirmation. I had been assigned a role long ago, and I'd been playing it well. After that realization, my internal posture changed. I stopped volunteering details about my life. Not consciously. It just felt unnecessary. I stopped assuming goodwill. I observed instead. I stopped expecting warmth in familiar rooms. Shame followed me, quietly persistent. Not the loud kind that demands attention. The quiet kind that asks questions late at night. What was missing in me that made this so easy? Why was my presence so optional? I felt guilty for noticing. Guilty for pulling back. Guilty for wanting something I couldn't articulate without sounding demanding. I became emotionally numb during family interactions. Present, but detached. Smiling when expected. Leaving early when possible. I told myself this was self-control. Understanding came gradually. I started noticing how rarely my absence registered, how little shifted when I wasn't there. I saw how often I had mistaken endurance for loyalty, silence for peace. This wasn't neglect born of chaos. It was neglect that had settled into routine. Naming it didn't heal it. It clarified it. There was grief in that clarity. Grief for something I had hoped for without admitting it. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't explain my distance. I simply adjusted my expectations downward. I stopped offering myself where I wasn't received. This wasn't empowerment. It was preservation. I still attend family dinners. I still answer messages. I still ask how everyone is doing. But something fundamental has shifted. There is space now between what I give and what I expect back. Not bitterness, not resentment, recognition. Sometimes I think about how quietly these stories unfold, how no one notices the moment something changes forever. There are no villains here, no dramatic exits, no confrontations that clear the air. Just a slow understanding that love, when rationed, teaches you how to survive on less. And once you notice that, you can't unlearn it.